Welcome to Surviving the Side Hustle, the podcast for high performers who've gone all in, but still feeling a little stuck. I'm your host, Rob Tracy, coach, speaker, and creator of the Prime Performance Process. If you're a solopreneur, small business owner, or just launched your side hustle and you're tired of grinding with no momentum, this is for you. Every week, we bring you guests that have broke the code, generated momentum, and finally got unstuck. And we're diving into their stories, their struggles, and their secrets to generating massive momentum in both their personal and professional lives. We don't do fluff here. We do frameworks, real talk, and share the kind of insights that get you unstuck for good. Welcome, and let's get rolling. But before we dive in, I gotta remind you, if you're overwhelmed, spinning your wheels, or just tired of hustling without the results, it's time for a Prime Performance Strategy session. In this free call, we'll zoom out on your life and business, identify the real reason you're feeling stuck, and build a game plan to help you reclaim your confidence, energy, and gain some clarity so you can get back to doing what you set out to do. Lead, grow, and thrive. This isn't surface level coaching. It's a system built on resilience, intentionality, clarity, and alignment. So head over to survivingthesidehustle.com/free call to grab your spot today. Again, that's survivingthesidehustle.com/free call. Let's get going and help you look good, feel good, and do great things. What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Surviving the Side Hustle. I'm super excited because today's guest is Florian Kemmerich, founder of On Vocation. He's an author, investor, and global thought leader exploring what it truly means to align your work with who you are. Florian, at 33 years old, Florian made a decision many people avoid their entire lives. He stepped off of a successful path that wasn't his. He left a high-level corporate career, went through a divorce, and began a deep journey into personal development after realizing he had learned how to make a living, but not how to actually live a life. So, Florian, welcome to the show. I'm excited to kind of dive into our conversation. So welcome, my man.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you for your invitation, for having me. And I'm really grateful, especially with your community is a very meaningful community. So I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah. And that's, it's great too, because the community itself is continuing to grow, not just the community, but I believe like the industry as a whole, especially in today's world now with hustle culture and everybody doing more, and price of living and cost is expanding and growing too. So I think this conversation will transcend my community into a bigger industry as a whole. And I'd love to kind of kick off our conversation here by kind of bringing it up because in a previous conversation you and I had, you had shared about how you lived what so many people call a successful life. When did you realize that success wasn't really the life that you were kind of chasing after, or really your life, I guess I should ask?
So it wasn't a moment and everything changed. It was a pivot and then kind of a landslide. But again, I was working in a corporation for many years. Great corporation, healthcare corporation, worked my way up. Yeah, it hit the ceiling at a certain moment. But again, for other people, there was no reason, even for my colleagues and friends, which we still kept contact over many years. They continued and they have their path. But for me, it was, I did a coaching in the company. Actually, my boss said, why do you want to do, your high potential, do a coaching? And the coaching is not just a normal coaching, it was actually a psychotherapy. So I went through a process where with that coach, she made me, and she said I was a hard nut to crack. But basically she made me recognize that I'm wearing a shield, a guard, and behind that, I'm hiding, which is from outside all good. Yeah, because again, I worked my way up. I was running a company. I was having a family in the house. And I was successful. But then when that happened, actually to allow to go inside, which I wouldn't. Yeah, I was a perfect smart ass. Yeah, business, eloquent, all good, fiddle my way through. But then when I recognized actually there's a kind of an inner child, the energy, the young energy, the drive in me. And then that started to pivot. So I started to actually ask myself, am I living my life or I just living the life? And that goes back when I was 18, I wanted to become a stand-up comedian. I had the art school chosen. I was doing music. I was a lot doing and different things, on the comedy side, joking and these things. And for me, it was a little bit to numb out the pain. Yeah, because basically, when you entertain and these things, you forget the ordinary pains of life. Yeah, and that included me. And then my father said, maybe you want to study something normal first and then you try. Because, there are a lot of artists there not making a living. And so maybe why don't you do at least you study something normal and then you try. And I studied the normal. I studied business administration and marketing, and I stayed in the normal. As a good boomer, I got a job and I worked my way up. And that in the age of 33, after that coaching session, I said, hold a second, who am I? What is it I actually want? Because so far I've responded to what you're supposed to do. And then I actually recognized that I have been the absent subject of my own education. My education gave me tools to make a living, not to tell me inside what is I want. So, because very few people I know who actually have an inner calling and they go that no matter what. Yeah. And then they make it professionally. And even you have some professions which normally would be purpose driven, vocation driven. Yeah. Which is a doctor, for example, or a chef, cook. Because if you're not, it's brutally hard. It's just, why would you do this? So you have to have a calling, serve patients, or actually around the food and the whole, this is a vocation. But many of us have a job to make a living, things are good. So, and then the question was for me, okay, at the deathbed, other than having had a family and a bank account, what's my legacy? What's the contribution I did? And so that triggered at the moment, and then basically I had a pivot. I got, again, rid of my golden handcuffs. I went into roller coaster life. I wanted to test, at 33, where usually you would just keep building. I just moved out. And then I did a lot of personal development methodologies, different things to learn about me because my education wouldn't give me the tools. And through that, I ended up at the end what I do today, which is impact investing. Yeah, my leitmotif is impact lives, share profits. And once I was doing that, then people were coming to me saying, Florian, you do impact. How can I do impact? And it's either people which were accomplished, did a business or several businesses, sold the businesses, certain age, 40-ish, 50-ish, and saying, so what is actually my legacy? How can I contribute? Which typically you do, you make money and now you give back. You do philanthropy, you write a good check, you feel good. And this is where I challenged that actually. I said, if I would have been younger and I would have had time and some tools for me to figure out what I want internally, and then I decide to do this, life is very different. It's still hard. You still might have issues, financially or health-wise or whatever happens in life. Life is life and you're vulnerable. But then you see things differently because once you have a vocation and you dedicate yourself to your vocation, you are in a zone. It's greater than you. It doesn't really matter. But normally people say, like my father, vocation is nice to have, and I know this and the passion, but life is life. Yeah, you need to get a real job, and earn money, and that was the pivot over time. And then I had these people coming to me. I said, what's your vocation? I don't know. Okay, do this exercise and that. Listen to you. Here's certain tools, and then you tell me once you know this. Oh, now I know it. Okay, next step. What could you resolve with that vocation? What's the theory of change? Next exercise. After that, hold a second. Now, which sectors or communities you could go into? And then the fourth step was basically, now you can actually design your personal professional business plan.
Mm.
You really look and to double down how you execute it. And then the other 3 steps I developed are more um, have the stamina to do, yeah, perseverance, and how you measure it. And I did this just empirically with more and more and more people, so either accomplished people or younger people, and the early 20s having these questions about, what to do with life. And they were asking me, Florian, this actually worked with great feedback and says, you need to write it down. I said, what do you mean writing down? Yeah, you need to write a book. So I wrote a book alone, in the corner, vulnerable, out of my comfort zone. Yeah. And then I reached out to Googled the best editorial for academic and teaching books. Boom, Routledge, US, UK. And I went on LinkedIn and said, hey there, my name is Florian. I have a book. And they loved it. 3 proofreaders, and I got published. And that's a first of 3 books because
Mm.
you can change the context. One is how to align your purpose with your profession. The one I'm just finalizing now as we speak, just did finish it last week, is how to align your purpose with your business. And the third one, how to align your purpose with your capital. Yeah. So it goes age-wise, first the profession, then the organization, and then the capital. So that has been a little bit my roller coaster life. And I'm in there vulnerable. And I wasn't sure even how people would, judge my book reviews. And the reviews I've gotten so far are really beautiful ones, getting under my skin. So now what I'm thinking about is how to actually gamify my 7 steps so that my younger generations might actually benefit that in a scalable way.
Yeah, I love that. And you said a lot of great things there to kind of unpack. And I want to get into gamifying in a minute here, and yeah, I'm excited to kind of talk a little bit more on the books and stuff. But I'd like to bring it back a little bit further though, because I know a lot of people listening here, they have a profession or in their job and what they're doing, they're living life, but then they are realizing like, okay, yeah, they want to be doing something else. And then a lot of people listening to this specifically are starting to like dip their toes into maybe what they really want to be doing, or at least they're trying to do something different that they feel more aligned with. And I know for me, speaking personally, it was almost scary to take that step because you build up this identity, you build up this idea, like this idea, yeah, identity of who you are, and it's kind of scary to let that go to step into something different. Like for me, shifting from strength and conditioning, like sports performance, into like entrepreneurial performance and speaking wasn't that crazy of a shift, but it was still pretty scary to make that move. So how for yourself leaving from the corporate world into what you're doing now, how did that change and how was that kind of adapting? And like you said, you mentioned that it was a roller coaster for a little while there.
Yes. So, Rob, honestly, by the way, you just triggered something. So, if I go even further back, at the age of 5 or 6, we lived in mid part of Germany. We went down to the Swiss border. There's a strong dialect. It's like another language. That's really
Mhm.
very different, like Swiss German. And so when we moved there, and I was 6 years old, I got bullied. I got aggravated physically. And so my parents, to defend myself, put myself in judo just to toughen
Mhm.
up. And then I went 15 years. I was in the national team. I was in the Bundesliga. I was competing on an international level. I was at the sporting school in judo. Then my last years at high school.
Mm.
But then there was a moment where I said, "Hold on a second, this is not me." And actually, the national trainer at this time, the coach, asked me, "Florian, I want you to go to Barcelona '92, the Olympics." That was in '89. And then he said, "But you have to do this and this and this." And I said, "Hold a second. Now it's no longer me. And actually, I don't see myself, you know, see how far can I go on whatever, awards or Olympics or what I could get, and then end up probably as a dojo with a dojo and a teacher. I didn't see myself. So, and again, it wasn't my vocation. You have people which have that vocation, which are really extraordinary, but I didn't. So I stopped and I moved over. I did my military service. Yeah. And then I moved over and I wanted to become a stand up comedian, a shift just on the calling side. You say you pivoted from sports over to what you do today. Did you do this deliberately, or was it just by accident? What triggered that, if I may ask?
I think it was a process. So it was like a slow unveiling of and understanding and digging deeper into it. Because personal development and personal growth has always been something I've been very, I guess, interested in as a young age, constantly reading, like, how do I work out better? How do I eat better, sleep better? How do I learn faster? How do I do this? How do I improve? How do I get better? And I think my background in strength and conditioning taught me a lot of things that transferred over, like goal setting, building resilience, being intentional, the importance of communication and influence, how to create opportunities and growing forward. And I think the education and experience that I learned in strength and conditioning kind of catapulted me into what I want to be doing now.
Beautiful, but you see that you had an internal question, like I had.
Hmm.
Yeah, I just said from sports, a pivot over to profession, normal way. And then I was at a peak saying, hold a second, am I living? I'm not growing. I had a void inside. Yeah, and by the way, this is something I've learned. It's very difficult to differentiate an intuition from imagination. So, for example, I'm a hobby musician. I have a band here. I've been playing music for a long period of time. Also, at its time, my intention was between, you know, stand-up comedy and music. I want to do something. Yeah, combine things. That was my goal. But the point is the following. If I say my goal is to be a rock star, most likely, once being there, I will not be fulfilled because it's externally oriented. It's about I'm famous, I'm loved, which is very different to say I play music because that's my calling. How far I can
Hmm.
go, how many people in front is secondary, and I see how to figure that out, but it's the intuition. So there's a fine line because both imagination and intuition are based on a calling, based on let's say, on a desire. But one is externally oriented, the one is internally oriented. So this goes in sports also, and I discussed that also in one of my steps, is if you are exposed to something, you can be very unhealthy and very stressed. If you expose yourself, it's the opposite because adrenaline goes up, endorphins go up. You do a challenge, like in sports, I want to get there, that you should do this for your life. And if you figure out actually what you want to do, and you can have different vocations, not just one. But that's when I call is one side is the vocation. The other part is the skill set. It doesn't mean that you have to pivot like you and I, totally something different, but it is really the moment where you say, let me give you an example. I did a workshop, an MBA student workshop at Oxford University, an On
Hmm.
Vocation workshop. Yeah. And one of the students says, Florian, I studied so hard to learn financial modeling, and AI is making my job obsolete because AI will do financial modeling much better, than I ever can. I cannot compete. I am doomed. I have no future. And I said, hold a second, let's put this aside. What's your vocation? We did an exercise, and the person says, you know what? I love nature, and I'm concerned about climate change and how the people to adapt. Yeah, whether it's man-made or not, it's secondary, but it's changing, and I need to adapt to it. I said, beautiful. Now you have a calling. You want to contribute about climate mitigation adaptation. Now let's take your superpower, what you've learned, being really good at financial and modeling and these things. You can combine them. And they said, but where do I go? Many places, insurance companies, financial services companies, big corporations, companies, you can do a startup, you can anything. And and he said, wow, because you combine your contribution to something greater than you and make it your job, but you still use your skill set because you translated the same, Rob. The
Hmm.
skill set you had from the sports, you translate into something new, but you still use that skill set, which is the same for me. And that's where the invitation is not to say, screw it, backpack 1 year, go away. No, it's really that for you to consider that. And that's what I want to inspire, of course, younger people to do that at an earlier stage. So for me, one of the big missing pieces is education not having a vocational component. Actually, that's my first LinkedIn article ever I wrote over 10 years ago, says, why is education not vocational? Because you go to that pivot. when I was 33 years old saying, I don't know myself. And I had no tools to figure out what I want in my
Mm.
education. And that's something where today in AI world, it's even worse because we are more and more mass manipulated. You know, you have the dopamine, you go on the screen, you have a lot of information going, and you need to cut out the noise. You need to cut out the noise to understand what is it what you want, and the different ways you can do this and different techniques to do this, which are part of also my book. But that's a part, and that's what I invite people to break, get your sort moment out of the hamster wheel, figure out what you want, and then you go back into the hamster wheel, you build on the hamster wheel. So you want to use AI and leverage AI for you to do your job because you're not competing on no knowledge, because that AI will do. But you compete, you basically leveraging AI or technology at a sense, or anything else actually to start contributing, which is bigger and greater than you. And even if it's hard, if it's less painful, because this is what you decided. And second, so it's a challenge. And the second component is the contribution you give makes it so worthwhile. Whether I'm more or less successful, you don't have to judge anyway. You don't have to justify. You can actually change a vocation. You can choose another one. But for me, vocation, I call it vocating. You vocate when you dedicate yourself professionally to your vocation, but you have to overcome the psychological hurdle that a vocation is something nice to do, yeah, and the job is something different. You have to combine them.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. And you had mentioned something just a few moments ago about how you can have more than one vocation. Is there like a limit? Is it like, obviously, if you have like, obviously, I mean, maybe it's not obvious, but you can't have, I would imagine you can't have like 100 vocations because that would then take away from a lot of other things, right? Like,
Yeah, again, usually, typical life is if you do too many things at the same time,
yeah.
you're not succeeding any of those. Now, there are some exceptions. I know I tell you some of these bright minds in tech, which build tech companies, like one after the other, the other, the other. Yeah. And now if they add to the tech company that the mantra of a company to right or wrong using tech, this is going crazy. But then they have to find the same people or the people on a vocation who are the ones to execute. Yeah.
Mhm.
And so you have to have the kindred spirits on a one. But normally, let's say I would invite you to figure out at first one, and then you might
Yeah.
test it. But sometimes you have two or three, and then look at the two or three. And at the second step is the theory of change. What could I actually do with it? And you take the low hanging fruit, yeah, of the two or three, saying, this is good. And then, there's this sector. I could do this. I could create this company. I could get a job there. I mean, again, I could contribute to the community. Different ways how you do that. But that's why. But also, maybe 5 years later, 10 years later, things pivot. Yeah, I've been there, done that. I want to do something else, which is
Mhm.
fine. You don't have to justify it. The important part is if you keep using your superpower, the thing you are really talented, and then you just change the vocation. Yeah, so it pivots. You still do what you and I did. You build on your skill set. You're not just pivoting totally new out of the blue.
Yo, what's up? Sorry for interrupting. It's me, Rob. If you've been listening and thinking, man, I just know I'm capable of so much more, but something's just really not clicking, well, I've got something for you. It's called the Prime Performance Personality Quiz. And in just a few minutes, you'll uncover what's actually slowing you down. So whether it's a mindset block, energy drain, or a lack of clarity, this quiz is going to give you specific insights to help you build momentum again. Again, this quiz is free, fast, and honestly, freakishly accurate. So take it now over at survivingthesidehustle.com/quiz and stop spinning, start winning today. Yeah, I love that. And so for you, the turning point was 33. And I know a lot of people listening through, thanks to statistics, a lot of individuals listening are right around that same age. Do we have to wait until we're in our 30s to kind of find this vocation, or is there ways that we can identify it at an earlier age?
I love that question. So, and that's why I sometimes get challenged on. So usually you start having very easy vocations when you are between the age of 5 and 10. You're young, you have some thoughts, you want to contribute something, you don't know, there's no limit.
Mhm.
Yeah, then you have parents saying, yeah, then education comes in and sidesteps a little bit for the next years. But then when you were 14, 15, 16, 17, you actually want to not do what at home is doing. You want to figure out your own way, and it depends also, you're conditioned by school, you're conditioned where you live, but also by the parents or the culture. Yeah. And so then usually it's an age where you're not aware of contributing. Usually it comes when you go to university. That's when you have the, younger generation saying,
Mhm.
hold a second, be against this, you want to do this, which is typically the age because you want to resolve something because you're concerned about, greater things. So the ideal age of that at this stage, I hope in the future changes, because if you have tools very early on, which you know, pick up from the 5 to 10 years old. Ideally, you could do this, but you might be challenged then because of biology and because of, hormones during the adolescent side. But ideally, it is 18 plus, 18 to 25. That's when you study. That's when a thing is, what is a job? What do I want to do? And this is where I would invite people to start with. Now, the second book, which is more about this in the context of an organization, it's a little bit further along for those who lead organizations or have a leadership in an organization. You have a more senior role, then you can influence an organization. And then last one is when you made it, when
Mhm.
you have the money. Actually, what are you going to do with this? But the question is really this: what I've seen, what works most, is that student level or MBA level, the post grad. But again, it doesn't only relate to university. It's just any job. Yeah. Because again, you can, I'm not saying you have to go to university. I'm not saying you have to. You need to figure out what you want to contribute and then put it into action. That's the first 4 steps so that you actually know what you're up to. You test it and you go for it.
Oh, I love that. And yeah, I gotta ask again. So you've got the first book out currently, correct? And that is
Yes.
Purpose and Profession, right?
Yes.
And
Correct.
then second one is the Purpose and Business that we're kind of just mentioning here, and
Yep.
we're getting ready for that one to come out, right?
Correct. So I'm going into production now. I hope by this summer or something. That should be, again, I depend on the editorial and,
Yeah.
and these things, but they have been very supportive, by the way. They didn't know me. I didn't know them. I'm a first time author. I wasn't meant to be an author. It just happened. Yeah. But again, they have been very, very supportive, and they loved also the angle. And I get some interesting feedback from people, even from academia, some professors saying, Florian, my specialty is leadership and purpose. And you have something. I go also some into methodologies, which people know, like Ikigai. Some other might have known Enneagram and these things. They are interesting. You learn about yourself, but you don't know what to do with it. So for me, it's really the actionable part. That's why what I call vocating. But the book is structured in a way where I tell my vulnerable story. And I was really nervous about this because I just
Mm.
get out there. Even once my wife said, honey, are you sure you want to put yourself out there? I don't know. Let's see. And the second part is what I call the science of vocating. I really wanted to give, based on my experience, some scientific literature in these things, because it's not just because I say it. Yeah, because I went through things, because otherwise I wouldn't have not let it do. And there's also mindfulness in there, but it's not spiritual. It's really just to cut out the noise and that you're focused and you can listen to yourself.
Mhm.
And then the 7 steps. Yeah. And then there is a checklist afterwards and so on. So this is a first book where it's about the individual.
Mhm.
And when you then use the same 7 steps, so the second book has my story, but from a business angle, my roller coaster life, the science of vocating in organizations, and the 7 steps in a context organization. By the way, I did certain things at a corporate job. I had my entire senior management going through an Enneagram course, which a fantastic outcome, because empathy went up, egos went down. You would understand that heterogeneous teams are much more performing, but now you understand. Also, then if you understand yourself, you can see within an organization, you might be in a position which is not really suiting you and it stresses you. But if you understand it, you might actually migrate into another department, other job, other things in the same organization. So this was a beautiful, so really you could see net promoter score going through the roof. Yeah. And that was my experience. So I narrate those examples, which I did in several organizations, some startups, some more mature ones, in the same sense, where you use tools to focus on a human resource, but not as a resource, but as a human, because it goes back to your own agency, as a human, which is the one where I'm really concerned. Kicking technology in, we are sucked into something and overwhelmed with information, which you can look at the Gen Alpha, Gen Zers a lot, and mental health problems, because there is no tool there to tell you need to figure out what you want, and then you fight for it. Yeah, not just get sucked into something and end at something, and then you're asking yourself what's actually going on.
See, that's like an amazing segue, because before we started talking about this last part right here, I started thinking in my head and I was like, oh, I have this question and I wasn't sure if I should ask you because it kind of seemed like a curveball. But I feel like what you just finished saying there kind of leads right into it. What is the cost of not finding the vocation? And like, is there really a cost? Because a lot of people, like you said, are distracted. They're kind of dissociate themselves from their life because they just go to their job and then they go on their phone and they're being distracted, not even paying attention to who they are or ever even finding out who they are. So like for yourself, you kind of discovered that around 33. For myself, it was probably around 28, 27, 29-ish when I started making this shift. And then there've got to be so many people who don't know who they are and live their entire lives, and they just continue to go on just without ever kind of discovering what their true passions are, or their vocation is, and they just kind of go through. Is there a problem with that? And if there is or isn't, like, could you explain a little bit on that? I'm sorry if that's a curveball too. I was thinking of
No,
this.
it is not. It's a really great question. So I would, rather than saying a problem, let's say there are expressions. So one expression is, if you're educated too strictly as a youngster, most likely afterwards, either you are mediocre doing what parents do and don't think about, you just, life is life, and you are disciplined and do things. Yeah. That can have other expressions later on. Or you go rebellious, saying, what the fuck? This is not, I don't. Yeah. And then,
Yeah.
but again, it's an overreaction. Second step is, if you are studying something, you're studying hard, and then at the end, when you have a job which is totally different, yeah, you can ask yourself, I don't know why I studied this. Maybe I lost some time, maybe I learned something, but I do something different because there was a pivot. That's another expression.
Hmm.
The expression goes on. Look at divorce rates. Look at the great resignation. People saying, I don't care. This is just bad. Yeah, that's another expression. You have another expression going, midlife crisis. Yeah, going crazy. I'm young, life is too short. I haven't lived. I should live more, and something. There's another expression, which is an overreaction. And then many, many, many of the studies from people at the last deathbed, which is a question I ask people at your deathbed, other than having had a family and a bank account, what is life for you? What has that been? Is many people said that I was too busy. I did not live my life. Yeah, that's another expression. So yes, there is a problem because we are vulnerable beings, and therefore we develop to defend ourselves, which is one part ego, and the second part financial means, which are the biggest hurdles for ourselves, just to let the guard down and do what we really want to do. And again, it has a positive effect because we're all here in the world to make a difference in something. But if it's ego driven or just financially driven under whatever means, even those people at the end are not necessarily the happiest ones, and then have questions, I should have lived differently. So that's expressions different in life you have. There are very few people where you see, and they exist, where they just do what they want to do and they don't regret anything. And success is not necessarily meant financially or by reputationally. because you don't need it to see yourself, to feel strong, feel safe. Yeah, because I have earned a lot of money, I can afford what I want, or I'm very famous and people love me, and that's what gives me, covers my insecurities of life, because we are vulnerable. So those are the things where you have expressions of exactly what you said. So what I wish for people is early on, look at the tools to figure out what you want to do. And you might make a mistake and you correct it, you do differently, but it's you deciding your life rather than just doing to have a safe bet and make sure. Yeah. And this is also when you have people leading big companies, something changes and they're no longer true to their authenticity has gone. Maybe you look at some of the big tech companies. What they started is very different what they are today. Yeah, and the big leaders, because this is a game about success, fame, and money. And behind that, you're no longer yourself. And you have people who actually do not want to dig in emotionally internally. They prefer, like I had, my smart ass shield. Life is good and I don't want to ask myself. One thing actually, Rob, was funny. When I was studying in school and I had philosophy classes and I read some of those books and I said, oh, that sucks. All the big philosophers, they ask you the question of meaning of life. And at the end, they do suicide or they have depressions. Something is wrong. Maybe I don't want to open that door. Yeah, maybe I just do my life and life is good. And I don't want to feel I stay in the head and in the action. And this is where what I do today and what I live today gives me much more. Our conversation is for me so meaningful. And I can watch others, other podcasts, other things, other comedians, where it gives me so much. I have tears in my eyes because life is precious and it's beautiful. And what I don't want to have, maybe it's also a lesson I have from my dad. My dad died the first month of his pension. He started after during the Second World War with nothing, built everything, lost then, couldn't live with it, and died at the age of 65. Yeah. And I said, why? Yeah. And I don't see myself retiring. Oh, I've worked now, I have my pension, and now I have no longer to work. Of course, if I have a job which is just financially supporting me, you're looking forward to get this over and then do something else. But then you have also very quickly people decline. Yeah. Because what do you do? If you are in your vocation, you will continue at a different pace, a different level. Yeah. But you don't want to stop something, because if you vocate, yeah, work is no longer work. And you don't have to say, now I need to pause because I'm tired of the job. I do something else. You might do pauses and you recover for health reason. But the situation is very different. And I have friends who look at me a little bit weird. Yeah. But also then there comes the notion saying, it's cool what you do. I would do something passionate. Yeah. They're all well off financially, intelligent people, but they didn't dare. And you mentioned that before, Rob, to actually dare to open Pandora's box inside you.
Man, I just love just love going back and forth with you, because I see a lot of your story mixed with my story, and I see a lot of similarities. And I think that's why I was so intrigued to have this conversation and kind of have you on to kind of get your take, because I can relate to a lot of the different things that you're saying. And I know we talked about the book. I know you had mentioned about gamifying, and I know before you had mentioned something about creating a platform and workshops and things. How else do people kind of get around and get educated, or at least learn from you about vocation, or like what are their steps if they know that they're being successful but they're not quite fulfilled? Like, how can they start the process of figuring things out?
Yeah, the most difficult one, if you have never done it and you don't dare because you're the limit, is the first one. When you open, it starts cascading. Do you want to know more? The first step is the one. And the different techniques in my book, I cite different techniques. I have some exercises, but again, you can find other things outside. This is not, uh, and the exercises usually you need to cut out the noise. In cutting out the noise, you do mindfulness, you do sports, you go contemplate in the mountains or in the ocean or in the nature or something, where you need a pause and a reflection and go through your life and go what is meaning for you. You go back when you were a child. There's really an exercise and things will bubble up. And then quickly you have the bozos saying, no, 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 this doesn't work. Just cut out the noise. Just let it flow and let it go. This is the first step. Now, the funny thing is of the book, Rob, I've never written a book. And when my publisher says, oh, do you have a cover page designer? I said, no, I don't do this for a living. And then they gave me some templates and it's all teaching books, academic books. No, this is not, doesn't. So I asked my kids, I have 5 kids, they're all Gen Zers. Yeah. And my son had the idea, my daughter did it. And it's a beautiful page. And I sent it to the publisher and she said, amazing, we take it as is. Yeah, with a little like Little Prince and the waves of the world outside, it shows the vulnerability also, which I loved, and it is. But none of my youngsters have read my book. So I said, okay, these younger generations, they don't go good old-fashioned book page by page. Some do, but it's less and less and less. And that's why I said I need to gamify it. And then hold a second, if I gamify it, it's a little bit like some of the audiobooks have components in which you don't have in a written book, which enriches it. Yeah, you might have a mindfulness exercise just in the book when you do an audiobook, which I love. And so in the same sense now, I said, okay, first I did my things, put my ducks in a row in terms of getting the word out with the book and documented it. Second thing, then also, of course, I've been starting doing some workshops, to help people on that. But the third thing is also now to actually develop a gamified version, for younger generation to go through the steps. But again, the first one is a difficult one, especially if you are afraid to open your own Pandora's box. That's where it's difficult.
Mm. Yeah, I love it, and it's tough, right? That's partially probably why so many people choose to go with that ignorance is bliss kind of route. Some like they're like, oh yeah, this is difficult work. It's because it's uncomfortable, right? You got to dig in deep and figure things out. Well, so Florian, I've just loved this conversation. I wish we could keep going longer and longer, but I want to be courteous of your time. And I just want to make sure that the listeners know where to find your book and how do they get in touch with you to stay up to date about when the new books do come out and such like that.
Perfect. So easy. My book is called On Vocation. So you go on-vocation.com. Yeah, and you have information there, also articles, that things, and blah. Yeah. So you can get the book and buy the book. That's the first exercise. It's a guide. It's not very thick. It's really, the intention is to trigger something, and then you can double down. There's a lot of literature in there. Yeah. Once the second book is out, I'll publish it there. And also I will, on that page, then announce once we have the gamified version, where I have actually my youngsters part of that. Yeah, which
Oh,
is
nice.
beautiful because I need them to test it because I'm not reading my book. Here's the game. What about this? Yeah, this is where we are right now. And yes, so it's on-vocation.com.
Awesome. I love it. And man, I appreciate this conversation. I love it. It's right up the alley of everything that I enjoy kind of learning more about and a lot of very similar things that I share with my teachings and my coaching. So I really appreciate you coming on this great conversation. But before I let you go, I got to ask you one final question. So when everything is all said and done and you're on your deathbed, what do you hope your work gives to the next generation?
Oh, what a beautiful question. So after I have survived my side hustle, yes, which it is, and my side hustle became my main hustle, and now being on vocation myself for a long period of time, yeah, and the vocating part. So my inspiration is, so My dream is to inspire as many people as I can in my lifetime to start vocating, to take their superpower, which we all have from the education side, but also then make it meaningful and combine it with the vocation. That is for me. There's nothing else I could dream more besides having a loving family, and having done well in life. But that is for me, make my life all worth.
Beautiful. I love it. Florian, thank you so much. This has been my pleasure. And I'd love to have you back when the other book's coming out. So I'd love to stay up to date and have you again, man. Thank you so much.
And thank you, Rob, for doing what you're doing. I love to see you vocating and love to see you inspiring people with your podcast at scale, which is beautiful.
All right, guys. And that's all we've got for today. Until next time, peace, 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 peace. And that's it for this episode of Surviving the Side Hustle. If you found this valuable, the best way to support the show is to rate and review on Apple or Spotify. It helps get the show in front of more driven individuals just like you, and helps them discover the tools to get unstuck, break through burnout, and build something real. And you can always connect deeper with me, our guests, or grab free resources at survivingthesidehustle.com/Rob. Whether it's a strategy call, the Prime Performance Personality Quiz, some of our products, or just to check out our free content library, connect with us over at survivingthesidehustle.com/Rob. And hey, remember this, you weren't meant to just grind. You were built to grow. So stay conscious, stay committed, and keep showing up. Peace, guys.